Letter arrived on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesday is when I do my grocery run, the same route I've done for 11 years, corner store, butcher on 5th. Sometimes the bakery if my knee isn't complaining. I just set the bags down on the counter when I noticed it on the mat. Cream envelope. Return address from a law firm downtown. My name typed clean and formal. I'm 63 years old. I've opened a lot of letters. Most of them don't change anything. This one changed everything. I set it on the kitchen table and made coffee first. Not because I wasn't curious, because something in my chest had already tightened in a way I recognized. The same feeling I get when a doctor pauses before he speaks. You want to be seated. You want your hands occupied. The letter was from an attorney representing my daughter-in-law. It stated in careful legal language that she had filed a restraining order against me, that I had been harassing her, showing up uninvited, making threatening communications, that I represented a credible threat to her safety and the safety of my grandchildren. I read it twice. Then I set it down and looked out the window at the yard. My neighbor was walking her dog. Same dog, same route. The world outside looked exactly the same as it had 5 minutes ago. I picked the letter back up. The incidents listed were specific. October 14th, appearing at her workplace unannounced. October 22nd, leaving objects at her front door. November 3rd, a phone call described as intimidating. I had dates. I had descriptions. I had my name printed next to each one, like evidence already decided. October 14th, I was in Tucson. My college roommate had a bypass surgery and I'd driven down to sit with him. I'd booked a motel near the hospital and stayed 4 nights. October 22nd, I was at my brother-in-law's retirement party 3 states away. November 3rd, I couldn't immediately place, but I knew I hadn't called her. We didn't speak like that. We'd never spoken like that. I put the letter in a drawer and finished my coffee. Then I opened the drawer and looked at it again. 63 years and I have learned one thing about trouble. It doesn't shrink when you look away from it. My son called that evening. His voice was flat in the way it gets when he's decided something before the conversation starts. Dad, I know you received the letter. I did, I said. I think you need to respect the distance she's asking for. I asked him if he believed what the letter said. He paused too long. I believe she felt something, he said. I believe she's been uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. I turned the word over like a stone, checking what was under it. Your father was in Tucson on October 14th, I said, with a receipt for the motel, with hospital visitor logs. Dad, October 22nd. I was at your uncle's party. You were there. You sat at the same table as me. Another silence. Smaller this time. She has a witness, he said finally. A witness to what? To you being there, outside her office. I set the phone down on the counter without ending the call. I stood there for a moment, looking at my hands. 63 years of hands, mechanic for 22 of them. Knuckles that tell a story. I picked the phone back up. Who's the witness? I asked. He wouldn't say. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark thinking about what it means when someone decides what you did before asking what you did. When the accusation is already dressed up in paperwork. When your name gets attached to a version of events you don't recognize. I thought about my daughter-in-law. I'd always found her hard to read. Private in a way that can look like warmth if you're generous, or look like calculation if you're not. I'd tried to be generous. I'd brought food when the grandkids were sick. I'd fixed the fence in their backyard 2 summers ago. I'd never once thought she saw those things as intrusions. But apparently something had shifted, and I had not been informed. In the morning I called my daughter. She's a paralegal in Portland, practical as a flathead screwdriver, not easily rattled. Have you seen this letter? I asked. My brother sent it to me last night, she said. Her voice was careful. What do you think? I think it's strange, she said slowly. I think the dates are wrong for starters. You were at the party too, I said. Dad, I know. I know you were there. So, who is this witness? She was quiet for a moment. I could hear her at her desk, the particular silence of a person choosing words. She's been spending a lot of time with someone, my daughter said. A man from her work, her supervisor. He started coming around a few months ago. What's his name? His name is Lawrence. I wrote the name down. I don't know what he has to do with this, she added. But I noticed him at their house twice when I came to see the kids. Your son wasn't home either time. I sat with that for a moment. Does your brother know? I don't know what your brother knows, she said. I know he's been working long hours. I know he believes her. After we hung up, I went back to the kitchen drawer. I took out the letter and read it a third time, slower now. The language was very clean, polished, the kind of language that takes a professional to construct, not anger typed at midnight. Architecture. Someone had built this. I spent the next 2 days pulling everything I had. The motel receipt from Tucson, I found it in my email confirmation folder, time-stamped, address, check-in and check-out. The hospital had a visitor log. I'd signed in both days. My old roommate's surgeon would remember me. I'd been there when the man woke up from anesthesia and told me he'd seen a golden retriever in heaven. People remember things like that. October 22nd was easier. There were photographs from the party. I was in half of them. The caterer had an invoice with the date. My brother-in-law had a guest book people had signed. November 3rd, I finally placed. I'd spent the day here in this house, fixing the kitchen faucet. A slow leak I'd been putting off. I'd ordered the parts online 3 days earlier. There was a shipping confirmation. I'd made a video call to my daughter in the evening to show her the repair. The call log would show date and time. 3 dates. 3 clean alibis, none of which required me to argue, only to document. I packed the papers in a folder and called my attorney. He's semi-retired now, handles small matters mostly, but he's known me since my wife was alive, and that counts for something. Bring me everything, he said. I did. He spread the papers across his desk and went quiet in the way that means he's reading seriously. When he looked up, his expression was settled. This was filed last week, he said. The hearing is in 18 days. I know. Tell me about the witness. I told him what my daughter had said. Lawrence, supervisor, the unexplained visits. He leaned back. A witness puts a man matching your description at her workplace on October 14th, while I was in Tucson. Same height? I don't know, I admitted. Same age range? Build? I thought about it. I couldn't tell you what Lawrence looks like. That's the first thing we need to find out, he said. He made a call from his desk while I sat there. A contact, he said. Someone who could pull basic information without causing a disturbance. Within 20 minutes, he had a name, a description. A LinkedIn profile printout slid across the desk toward me. Lawrence was 58 years old. White hair, heavier build, approximately my height. We sat there together looking at the photograph. People see what they expect to see, my attorney said, especially at a distance, especially if someone has already told them who they're looking for. That sentence landed like a slow weight. Someone had told them who they were looking for. I called my daughter back that evening and asked her a question I hadn't thought to ask before. When she'd seen Lawrence at the house, had he ever been there at the same time as the grandchildren? Had he met them? Yes, she said. And I heard discomfort in the word. The second time he was there, the kids were home from school. Did he seem familiar with them? A pause. He knew their names, she said, without being introduced. I didn't say anything for a moment. Dad, she said quietly, what do you think is happening? I think your brother is being kept busy, I said, and I think someone is building something that takes time to build. That night I went through my phone records, calls I'd made and received over the past 3 months. I looked for patterns I hadn't noticed before, not because I'd been paranoid, but because I'd had no reason to look. In September, my daughter-in-law had called me twice, both calls short, both about the grandchildren's schedules. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. Now I looked at the dates again. Both calls were made the day before events she'd later claim I'd disrupted. The call in September, the day before a school event she would tell the attorney I'd shown up to unannounced. She'd told me about the event herself. I wrote that down, then I found something else. My son's home insurance. We share an agent. I'd added them to my policy years ago when they bought the house, and we'd never untangled it. I called the agent the next morning. Has there been any recent activity on the policy? I asked. Any changes or inquiries? She checked. There had been. A beneficiary update attempt in October. Incomplete, flagged by the system because a secondary signature was required that was never provided. My signature. Who initiated it? I asked. She gave me the name. It wasn't my son. I sat very still for a moment. Then I asked her to note the call, to preserve the record, and to flag any future changes for manual review. She agreed. When I called my attorney back, he was quiet for a long time after I told him. "This isn't about a restraining order," he said finally. "No," I said. "She's positioning. House, insurance, your access to the grandchildren. Those are the pillars. She takes your credibility, she takes your access, she takes your son's attention. Then whatever comes next, she controls the frame." I thought about my son, working long hours, believing her, not asking the question he should have asked first, which was, when did your father ever give you a reason not to trust him? I didn't blame him. I wanted to, but I didn't. He'd been managed, slowly and carefully, the way you manage someone who loves you. You give them reasons to be tired. You give them reasons to be grateful. You give them a version of reality, piece by piece, until the picture looks complete. He hadn't looked for the seams. The week before the hearing, something changed. I was coming out of the hardware store. I'd gone for weather stripping, the kind of errand that fills a Tuesday, when I saw them. My daughter-in-law and Lawrence standing at the crosswalk half a block down. Close. Not touching, but the specific kind of close that tells you touching isn't the point. Familiarity is the point. She was talking. He was nodding. She laughed at something. I did not follow them. I want to be clear about that. I got into my car and I called my daughter. "I just saw them," I said. "Together, 2 blocks from my house." She was silent. "She knows where I live," I said. "She knows my routine." "Dad, don't engage." "I'm not engaging," I said. "I'm documenting." I took a photograph before I pulled away. Timestamp, location. The photograph showed 2 people at a crosswalk. It showed my daughter-in-law's face clearly. Lawrence's profile. I added it to the folder. The morning of the hearing, I wore the same jacket I wore to my wife's funeral. Not for sentiment, for gravity. I wanted to look like a man who understands what rooms require of you. My attorney walked in beside me. He carried a folder that was, by now, considerably thicker than when we'd started. My daughter-in-law was already there with her attorney. She wore something modest, muted. She had positioned herself as someone afraid, and she looked the part. I didn't fault her performance. I'd spent 30 years as a mechanic reading engines by sound. I know that what something presents and what it is are often 2 different things. My son was not there. I don't know if he was asked to stay away or chose to. I noticed the absence, the way you notice an empty chair at a table that used to be full. The judge was a man about my age, maybe a few years older, with the look of someone who has heard a great many stories and is no longer surprised by any of them. She spoke first. Her attorney laid out the case. October 14th, October 22nd, November 3rd. The dates, the descriptions, a witness for October 14th, a pattern of unwanted presence, a grandfather who had difficulty respecting boundaries. That phrase, difficulty respecting boundaries, was the one that sat in my chest wrong, not because it stung, because it was so clean, so pre-shaped. Exactly the kind of language that looks reasonable in a courtroom and means nothing in a life actually lived. The judge turned to my attorney. We didn't argue with the story. We replaced it. My attorney submitted the Tucson motel receipt, the hospital visitor log with my signature and the date. A brief letter from my old roommate's daughter confirming I had been present at the hospital on the 14th and 15th. October 22nd. 3 photographs from the retirement party with timestamps, a copy of the signed guest book, a statement from my brother-in-law. November 3rd. The parts order with delivery confirmation dated October 31st. The video call log to my daughter, 6:48 p.m., duration 41 minutes. Then my attorney addressed the witness. He submitted the LinkedIn printout, a photograph of Lawrence, a comparison of approximate physical description, height, build, age, hair color, against my own. He noted that both men, from a distance, might read as the same. He then submitted the photograph I had taken at the crosswalk. My daughter-in-law with Lawrence. Timestamped. 1 week before the hearing, the judge looked at it for a long moment. My attorney noted the proximity to my home. He noted that the 2 individuals in the photograph had a documented prior relationship, the workplace, and had been observed together at my son's home by a family member on multiple occasions. He submitted the insurance record, the incomplete beneficiary update attempt, initiated by a name that was not my son's. The room was very quiet. The judge looked at my daughter-in-law. Can you explain how the petitioner was present at these 3 locations while documented records place him elsewhere? Her attorney started to speak. The judge held up one hand. I'm asking her. She looked down at the table. I believe I saw him, she said. I was certain at the time. And the insurance record, the judge asked. That was a mistake, she said. I was trying to help with paperwork. At whose request? She didn't answer right away. The silence ran a full 10 seconds. I counted. I thought it was something he wanted done, she said finally. The judge set down his glasses. He looked at the folder. He looked at her. The petition is denied, he said. I'm ordering a full copy of these proceedings sent to the district attorney's office for review of potential false reporting. Any further filings in this matter will require prior review. He stood. The room exhaled. Outside the courtroom, she walked past me without looking. Her attorney touched her elbow and steered her toward the elevator. I watched them go. I stood there in the hallway for a moment. My attorney was already packing up his briefcase. He's efficient like that. Go home, he said. Rest. I did. That evening, my son called. His voice was different this time. The flatness was gone, replaced by something that sounded like a man standing at the edge of something large and not yet sure where to put his feet. I didn't know, he said. I know you didn't. I should have asked you first. He stopped. I should have asked before I believed anything. I didn't tell him it was fine. It wasn't fine, but it was the kind of not fine that families survive if they're honest about it, and we've always been honest about the hard things in this family. That's a thing his mother taught us both. You can come by this weekend, I said. Bring the kids. He was quiet for a moment. Yeah, he said, we will. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The same table where I'd opened the letter. Same coffee mug. The folder was still on the counter. I thought about what my attorney had said in his office that first day. A witness puts a man matching your description there. And I thought about Lawrence standing at the crosswalk. Someone who had learned my name, my routes, my grandchildren's names before he needed to. Someone patient. Someone building a thing meant to hold. I thought about the insurance update that hadn't gone through because it needed my signature. The small miscalculation in what is otherwise a careful plan. Paper doesn't improvise. It either has your name on it or it doesn't. I've been a mechanic for most of my working life. People bring you things that are broken and they want them fixed. But sometimes the thing they hand you is not actually what's broken. The real problem is somewhere deeper. Somewhere you only find if you're willing to take the whole thing apart. This was like that. The restraining order was not the problem. The restraining order was the surface. The problem was a quiet arrangement that had been building for months, designed to leave a man looking unstable and isolated and far from anyone who would listen. And the reason it didn't work is the same reason most things fail when they're built on assumptions. It assumed I wouldn't document. It assumed I'd be so rattled by the accusation that I'd spend my time reacting rather than building a counter record. It assumed my son would stay persuaded. It assumed my daughter wouldn't notice what was happening. It assumed a lot of things about a family that it didn't actually know well enough to assume. The DA's office opened a preliminary review 3 weeks later. I gave them everything in the folder. They asked if I had anything further. I said I'd provide whatever they needed. I haven't seen my daughter-in-law since the courthouse hallway. My son is navigating a situation that is difficult and quiet and not yet resolved. I don't rush him. That's his path to walk, and he'll walk it at the pace he walks it. The grandchildren came over on Saturday. We made pancakes. The older one showed me a card trick he'd learned at school. The younger one fell asleep on the couch in the afternoon, which is something she's done since she was 3 years old, and watching her sleep was as ordinary and precious as anything I've known. No one took that from me. I want to say something to whoever's listening to this who has ever had their name handed to a room before they could get there themselves. The label travels faster than you do. It always will. And you cannot outrun it. You can only outlast it, with receipts and timestamps and the names of people who saw you somewhere else entirely. Keep your records. Keep them boring and specific and dated. Because the most powerful thing in a room full of stories is a fact that doesn't need to argue. You don't have to be loud about it. I never raised my voice once through any of this. I just kept showing up with paper. Stay close to the people who ask questions before they decide. They're worth more than you know. If something in this story felt familiar, if you sat across from an accusation that didn't match your life, leave a comment. Tell me where you're hearing this from. Your story matters. And if sharing it gives someone else the clarity to start documenting their own truth, then this channel is doing what it's supposed to do. We put out a new story every week. Real ones. Quiet ones. The kind that don't make the front page but stay with you. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And take care of yourselves. Whatever you're carrying right now, you don't have to carry it louder. You just have to carry it longer. I've thought a lot about what made this whole thing possible. Not the legal part. That resolved itself once the paper was in the room. I mean the part before that. The months where something was being constructed around me while I was going about my life, buying weather stripping, driving to Tucson to sit with a sick friend, showing up at a retirement party, and signing a guest book. Living. Just living. And someone was counting on the fact that a man who is simply living doesn't keep receipts. That's the first thing I tell anyone in a similar position. Not because you should walk through your own life like you're being surveilled, but because the world doesn't always announce when it's turning against you. The motel confirmation in my email folder. The parts order with the delivery date. The video call to my daughter that ran 41 minutes. None of those things were saved because I suspected anything. They existed because ordinary life leaves ordinary traces. The difference was that when I needed them, I went looking. What I keep coming back to is Lawrence, not with anger, I'm past anger, but with a kind of clear-eyed recognition. He had learned my grandchildren's names before anyone introduced him. He had positioned himself in a life that wasn't his, wearing an outline close enough to mine that a witness at a distance couldn't tell the difference. That takes patience. It takes planning, and it requires that the person being replaced stay unaware long enough for the structure to hold. I stayed unaware. For a while. That's on me. My son stayed unaware longer. That's on the people who managed his attention carefully, kept him tired, kept him grateful, kept him looking the wrong direction. I don't carry resentment toward him for that. I understand now that being deceived by someone you love isn't a character flaw. It's a cost. You pay it because you trust it, and trusting is not the mistake. The mistake is refusing to ask questions when the evidence starts to whisper. He asked them eventually. That's what matters. There's something I've learned about integrity that I couldn't have articulated at 30 or even 50. Integrity isn't the absence of being wronged. It's what you do with the record. You keep it honest. You keep it complete. You don't embellish and you don't omit. Because the moment you start shaping the truth to fit your feelings, you've lost the only advantage a fair person has over an unfair one. I went into that courtroom with a folder, not a speech, not outrage. A folder full of dates that didn't care how anyone felt about them. The insurance attempt with the wrong name attached. The visitor log with my signature. The photograph at the crosswalk with a timestamp. The truth didn't need my voice. It just needed to be present. I think about the plant by the window that was dying when I came home. Nobody had watered it. My life had been paused mid-sentence while someone else tried to rewrite the ending. But here's what they didn't account for. The ending isn't written by the person making the accusation. It's written by whoever shows up with the longer record. I showed up. That's all I did. Steadily, quietly, without drama. I showed up with paper. If you're listening to this and something in it sounds familiar, if someone has ever handed a room a version of you that you didn't recognize, start your folder tonight. Keep it boring. Keep it specific. Keep every date. You don't have to be the loudest person in the story. You just have to be the one still standing when it's over.